500 winters without cracks, and 30 years until complete destruction. Why do modern walls have such a short lifespan while ancient buildings stand for centuries? We are used to thinking that technology makes our lives better and construction more reliable. But the reality outside our windows tells a different story.
Bring the mallet, quick!
The difference lies not in lost magical technologies, but in a fundamental change in the philosophy of the relationship to the material. Ancient craftsmen did not try to defeat nature by creating airtight capsules, but learned to coexist with moisture, wind, and cold. They used materials that could breathe and adapt to changes in the environment, unlike our rigid and fragile structures. Today we will explore why simple stone and wood prove to be superior to polymers and concrete. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how the absence of waterproofing saved houses from decay, and why the primitive methods of the Middle Ages were actually the pinnacle of engineering thought. What if I told you that everything you believed about the strength of concrete is not true? We are used to thinking that a wall must be monolithic and absolutely rigid in order to withstand loads for centuries. However, the secret of medieval masonry lay in the use of lime mortar, which had the amazing property of self-repair. Unlike modern Portland cement, which turns into dead stone when it hardens, lime continues to live inside the wall. It was a slow chemical process that did not stop for a minute for hundreds of years. Lime mortar did not simply glue the stones together, it reacted with them and with the atmosphere. When a microcrack appeared in such a wall, rainwater inevitably got into it, which is a mortal enemy for modern concrete. In the case of lime, the water dissolved particles of the binder, which then crystallize, filling the crack again. The wall literally healed its wounds using the very moisture that was supposed to destroy it. This is reminiscent of the regeneration of living tissue, which is not possible with modern rigid mixtures. Modern cement, on the contrary, is designed to achieve maximum strength in the shortest possible time, sacrificing durability. It is too hard and inelastic, so at the slightest movement of the ground or thermal expansion, it simply bursts. A crack in a concrete wall is a death sentence, the beginning of the end, where water will get in, freeze, and tear the material apart from the inside. Medieval walls were more flexible. They could deform slightly without losing their load-bearing capacity. This allowed buildings to survive earthquakes and soil settlement, which caused cracks in modern houses. The craftsmen of the past understood that absolute rigidity was the path to destruction, while flexibility was the key to eternity. They did not use reinforcement bars, which rust and tear the concrete from the inside, relying only on the correct distribution of loads. The entire structure worked under compression, and the heavier the wall was, the stronger it became over time. Over the centuries, lime absorbed carbon dioxide from the air, returning to its original state, limestone. The wall actually turned back into a monolithic rock created by human hands. Today we build quickly, using chemical additives to accelerate hardening in order to deliver the project to the customer. We have forgotten that time is an important ingredient in high-quality building materials that cannot be replaced by additives. Medieval builders did not rush. They knew that their work had to outlive them and their great-grandchildren. This approach is radically different from the modern concept of build, sell, and forget. The chemistry of ancient walls was simple, but ingeniously balanced by nature itself and thousands of years of experience. No complex polymers that disintegrate under ultraviolet light after 20 years. Just stone, sand, and burnt lime. These materials age beautifully, covered with patina, rather than flaking off in dirty pieces like modern plaster. We traded eternity for speed, and now we pay for it with constant repairs. I wonder how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world, because there are old buildings everywhere. Where are you from? Do you agree that modern materials are inferior to ancient ones in terms of durability? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next reviews. Want to know a secret that will change your perception of simple stone masonry? It seems that there could be nothing simpler than taking a stone and placing it in a wall with mortar. However, medieval masons knew about the structure of the material that even architects ignore today. Each sedimentary rock has its own layers, or as the master said, its own bed, formed by millions of years of pressure. If a stone is laid incorrectly against the grain, it will begin to delaminate and crumble after just a few winters. The craftsmen carefully examined each block, determining the direction of the layers so that they could lay it in the wall in the same way it lay in the ground. This ensured maximum compressive strength and prevented water from getting between the layers of rock. The stone worked in its natural conditions, simply changing its place of residence from the quarry to the wall of the cathedral. Modern decorative cladding often ignores this rule, which is why expensive facades crumble after 10 years. We see stone as decoration, while our ancestors saw it as a living structure with character. In addition, there was a strict system of binding, where each stone held its neighbors and distributed the load. No metal staples were used that could rust and tear the masonry from the inside. The wall was held together by its own weight and friction, and the greater the load from above, the more monolithic the structure became from below. This was the principle of a gravity lock, which worked flawlessly. Particular attention was paid to the selection of stones of different sizes to fill the voids in the wall thickness. The outer and inner layers of masonry were made of hewn stone, and the space between them was filled with rubble and poured with lime. This created a unified but not rigid array capable of dampening vibrations from passing carts or blows from siege weapons. The wall was not just a barrier, it was a complex engineering system. Bricklayers knew which types of rock could be combined with each other and which would react chemically. The use of limestone next to sandstone required special layers to prevent salts from migrating and destroying the structure. Today, we often build everything together, focusing only on the color and texture in the catalog. Ignorance of basic geology leads to beautiful facades turning into ruins. They also took into account how rainwater would run down the surface of the wall, treating the stones in a certain way. Every ledge, every cornice acted as a drip edge, diverting moisture away from the joints. This was protection by design, not by chemical treatments that wash away in a couple of seasons. In the next chapter, you will learn why modern attempts to protect a house from moisture are actually killing it. What I am about to show you is prohibited in 12 countries as a violation of building codes. But this is how houses were built for centuries. A modern house is essentially an airtight plastic bag wrapped in vapor barrier and foam insulation. We strive for absolute airtightness to retain heat, but in doing so, we trap moisture inside the structures. In a medieval house, the walls breathed, allowing water vapor to pass through them to the outside without accumulating condensation. Structures made of stone, brick, or half timbering filled with adobe had high vapor permeability. Moisture from people's breath and cooking slowly migrated through the walls and evaporated outside. This prevented the appearance of mold and rot, which are the scourge of modern frame houses. The house always maintained a healthy microclimate without complex forced ventilation systems that break down and make noise. Today, we use vinyl wallpaper, latex paints, and polystyrene foam, creating ideal conditions for mold behind a beautiful facade. As soon as the vapor barrier is compromised, and this always happens, the insulation gets wet and stops working. The wooden frame begins to rot in this damp environment, hidden from view by drywall. Medieval walls were honest. If they got wet, they dried out because nothing prevented them from doing so. The absence of synthetic films meant that the house interacted with the environment rather than being isolated from it. Clay and wood acted as natural humidity regulators, absorbing excess moisture and releasing it when the air became dry. This kept the load-bearing structures in perfect condition for centuries. We, on the other hand, try to preserve materials that inevitably deteriorate in a closed space. The paradox is that by trying to protect a house from moisture using modern methods, we often accelerate its destruction. Sealants dry out, films tear, and water that gets inside can no longer find a way out. A medieval house could survive a flood and dry out, but a modern house often has to be demolished after serious water damage. We have created thermoses in which it is impossible to live without air conditioners and recuperators. Ancient builders created organisms that lived in symbiosis with nature. If you like learning such facts, don't forget to like this video. It really helps the channel. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss new videos.
Heave. Lower it slowly on the left.
What if I showed you a time machine that could transport us to the foundations of ancient cathedrals? Modern engineering dictates the creation of a rigid, reinforced concrete foundation that must remain immovable. Engineers strive to make the foundation as monolithic as possible to eliminate even the slightest displacement. But the earth never remains stable, and its movements prove stronger than even the most sophisticated structures. Therefore, rigidity often becomes a weakness when natural forces intervene. Modern builders are well aware that the ground beneath a house has a life of its own. It expands when it freezes and settles after thawing, changing its position by centimeters and sometimes by tens of centimeters. Because of this, the load on the foundation is distributed unevenly, which leads to cracks. Concrete does not tolerate tension well, so any movement of the ground becomes a test for it. As a result, the foundation begins to collapse long before the entire building wears out. When a rigid concrete foundation is subjected to the force of frost heaving, it often cracks because it is not flexible. Even slight lateral pressure can cause structural damage. Over time, the cracks widen, allowing water to seep in, which accelerates the deterioration. The internal reinforcement begins to rust, and the concrete loses its strength. Thus, a foundation created as a model of reliability can become a source of problems. Medieval foundations were often trenches filled with large stones without a rigid mortar bond. The builders did not seek to create a monolith. They sought stability through mobility. Each stone was selected so that it would lie stably, but could shift slightly if necessary. This flexibility made the structure surprisingly resilient in difficult soil conditions. The house did not break, but adapted. This design functioned as a drainage system, diverting water from the base of the house, and as a flexible cushion. Water flowed freely between the stones without accumulating under the walls. When the ground shifted, the stones could move slightly relative to each other without destroying the overall system. The building responded to changes gently and naturally, like a living organism. Thanks to this, many buildings survived for more than a century. The house seemed to float on the ground, adapting to seasonal changes instead of fighting them. This principle worked especially well in areas with heavy rainfall. The flexible foundation accepted changes rather than resisting them, which gave the structure additional stability. Therefore, medieval buildings rarely collapsed due to uneven settlement. They existed in harmony with the soil on which they stood. The buildings also had massive bases that widened toward the bottom, which reduced the pressure on the ground. This shape distributed the weight so that the ground did not experience excessive stress at any one point. Huge cathedrals could stand on weak soils thanks to this smart approach. Of course, builders made mistakes, but often it was the flexibility of the structure that saved the building. Even steep slopes did not lead to disaster, as can be seen in the example of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The lack of rigid waterproofing in the foundation was compensated for by the correct choice of location and materials. Moisture-resistant stone was laid at the bottom, and more sensitive materials were placed higher up. The builders thought in advance about how the building would behave in rainy years and during floods. Today, we rely on bitumen coatings, which age surprisingly quickly, and when water penetrates the reinforcement, destruction is only a matter of time. Ancient craftsmen also understood the importance of drainage and diverting water away from walls. They designed gutters so that water would drain away immediately, rather than pooling near the foundation. Stone gutters and long spouts were not decorative elements, but served an important function. Gargoyles on cathedrals are not just decoration, but a way to throw rainwater as far away from the foundation as possible. Thanks to this, the walls remain dry even during seasons of heavy rain. Without using hooks as required, we move straight to the essence of woodworking technology. Medieval carpenters chose trees for construction while they were still in the forest. They knew what time of year to cut down trees, exclusively in winter, when the sap flow had stopped. This decision was based on generations of experience, as trees cut down in winter were noticeably lighter and more stable. During the cold season, it was almost never infected with fungus, as there was no nutrient medium left inside it. Moisture content during winter harvesting was reduced to such an extent that the wood cracked less and retained its shape longer during drying. Therefore, the right time for harvesting was considered as important as the right choice of species. After felling, the logs were not sent immediately to the sawmill, as is done now for speed of production. Since ancient times, craftsmen have understood that oak benefits particularly from prolonged soaking in running water. In some regions, the wood was kept in rivers for 3 or even 5 years, without rushing to further processing. This approach allowed the natural force of the water to slowly and thoroughly wash away unnecessary substances. The result was so durable that products made of stained oak are still in use today. Oak was often subjected to a tanning process, being kept in running river water for several years. During this time, the wood became dense, heavy, and extremely resistant to external influences. The color of the wood darkened and became more saturated, and the structure itself became stronger and harder. Pests avoided such material, as it was no longer attractive to them. After final drying, stained oak became one of the most durable natural building materials. The wood was dried naturally under sheds for many years, at a rate of 1 year of drying per inch of thickness. Craftsmen stacked the logs in ventilated areas where there were no sudden temperature changes and made sure that air could circulate freely between the rows. This method required patience, but it allowed the wood to gradually release moisture without warping. As a result, each beam retained its shape and density, which is impossible to achieve in modern drying chambers. The slow process made the material stable for decades. This avoided the internal tension in the fibers that breaks modern timber dried in high-speed kilns. When wood is dried too quickly, its outer layers harden while the inner layers remain moist, making the material capricious and short-lived. In the old days, logs matured evenly and became stronger with each passing year. Therefore, even after centuries, the beams in old houses remain straight. Today's boards, on the other hand, often warp after the first changes in humidity. The parts were joined without the use of iron nails, which inevitably rust and destroy the wood around them. Different regions of Europe developed their own types of locks, but the principle was the same everywhere. Wood was joined to wood without unnecessary materials. Such connections required special precision, so the craft of carpentry was passed on only after many years of practice. The tenons and mortises were fitted by hand until the parts fit together perfectly. This provided strength that could withstand enormous loads. Thanks to this, the house did not just stand, but literally breathed like a living organism, responding evenly to humidity and temperature. Iron fasteners, on the other hand, always became a weak point and led to moisture accumulation. Therefore, ancient craftsmen avoided metal inside load-bearing elements. They understood that durability begins with the coordinated work of all parts. The surface of the beams was often burned or treated with natural oils and tar. Burning created a dense carbon layer that protected the wood from water and parasites. This layer did not peel or crack because it became part of the surface itself. Natural oils also penetrated deep into the fibers and strengthened them, preserving the natural beauty of the wood. All this made the material resistant even to prolonged exposure to sun and wind. The timber used in half-timbered houses has stood in the rain and snow for 500 or 600 years, becoming only silvery with age. This silvery color is not a sign of decay, but a natural patina that forms on well-treated wood. Modern impregnations need to be renewed every few years because they only cover the surface and do not change the structure of the material. Medieval processing, on the other hand, transformed wood into a self-sufficient and durable element that did not need regular protection. It is this difference in approach that explains why old houses stand for centuries, while modern ones often require repair after only a decade. Guess what happened next to those buildings where roofs were built according to modern flat roof standards? They disappeared because water is the most persistent destroyer in nature, and it inevitably found its way inside. Even the highest quality membranes lost their elasticity over time, and ultraviolet rays made them brittle. Microcracks, which no one noticed at first, turned into large fractures after just a few seasons. That is why flat roofs of the past rarely lasted even a century. Medieval builders had no illusions that water could be stopped with sealants. They knew that it had to be removed from the roof as quickly as possible. They understood that any delay in water removal was a step toward destruction, and that the best way to protect a roof was to keep the water flowing. Therefore, architects thought in advance about how the roof would behave in snow, rain, and wind. In the building codes of various regions of Europe, there were even regulations on the minimum slope angle. This was not just a recommendation, but a mandatory element of durability. Roofs were therefore built with extremely steep slopes, sometimes at angles of 60 degrees or more. This height gave the houses a recognizable silhouette and allowed the use of shorter, high-strength rafters. The steeper the slope, the faster moisture drained away, and the less chance there was of water getting under the roofing. In regions with heavy snowfall, steep roofs saved houses from destructive loads. As a result, the reliability of a building began at its very top. This geometry prevented snow from accumulating in huge caps, creating a critical load on the rafters. Even during heavy snowstorms, the snow could not stay on the roof for long and fell off under its own weight. Thanks to this, the house remained stable even in harsh climatic conditions. The owners did not have to clean the roof manually, which was an important advantage. The shape of the roof itself served as a natural protection that did not require constant intervention. Water did not linger on such a roof for a second, instantly rolling down without finding microcracks. The craftsmen built it so that the drainage was unobstructed in any weather. Even if the tiles shifted slightly, the flow still did not penetrate inside. The structure worked as a single organism in which each element supported the other. Thanks to this, the roofs withstood not only rain, but also centuries of expansion and contraction of the material. Tiles or slate tiles were laid overlapping like fish scales, which ensured the mobility of the covering. Such a covering could slightly expand under the influence of temperature without destroying the overall system. The material was laid by hand, and each row was checked for angle alignment and tightness of fit. Slate provided a particularly high level of protection because it was dense and absorbed almost no moisture. The use of lead to seal joints and valleys was an expensive but incredibly effective solution. Craftsmen knew that these areas were most prone to water leakage, so they paid special attention to them. Lead, being soft and heavy, perfectly adapted to the shape of the surface, filling in all the small irregularities. It did not crack, delaminate, or rot, which made it an ideal protector against moisture. Many of these lead elements have survived to this day almost unchanged. Lead was soldered or welded directly onto the roof, creating a waterproof trough in the most vulnerable areas. Unlike modern materials, which need to be replaced over time, lead became part of the structure. It withstood hailstorms and huge temperature fluctuations while remaining watertight. Even strong winds could not damage it because it fit tightly to the surface. This stability made medieval roofs almost invulnerable to dampness. The weight of heavy tile or slate roofing played an important role in stabilizing the entire building. The heavy roof pressed vertically down on the walls, compacting the masonry and making it more stable. This load acted as a natural reinforcement for the structure, helping it to withstand storms. Modern lightweight roofs often suffer from vibrations that occur during storms. A heavy roof, on the other hand, absorbed the energy of the wind, keeping the entire structure calm. Medieval roofs were held in place by their own weight and gravity, without the need for complex engineering solutions. Their reliability was the result of experience, not an attempt to save on materials. Therefore, such houses felt more secure even in harsh natural conditions. The rafter system was designed with a huge margin of safety, often excessive by our standards. The craftsmen used large logs with a dense structure that could withstand decades of stress. These elements were aligned by hand so that they fit perfectly into the joints. Even today, many of these century-old rafters have hardly lost their shape. Such strength allowed the roof to remain stable regardless of the weather. Large section logs were used, which could withstand not only the weight of the roof but also hurricane-force winds. They were joined with wooden dowels and locks, which ensured the integrity of the system. The wind always blew through the space under the roof, providing ideal ventilation for the wooden structures. Thanks to the stable air exchange, the wood did not get damp and remained strong. Rot could not start where it was dry and constantly ventilated. We often try to make attics livable by insulating the roof and blocking ventilation, which leads to condensation and rotting rafters. Modern houses suffer from this particularly badly because insulation accumulates moisture. Moisture remains inside the structure and slowly destroys the wood, preventing it from drying out. Ancient attics were cold and utilitarian, which saved the house from such problems.
This layer will protect the stone well.
We are used to thinking of painting a house as a purely decorative procedure that needs to be done once every 10 years. For medieval inhabitants, whitewashing with lime was an annual ritual, vital for the preservation of the building. It was not just paint, but the application of a protective sacrificial layer that took the brunt of the elements. Lime worked as an antiseptic, killing any mold and fungus that tried to take hold on the facade. Every year in the spring, homeowners renewed the layer of lime, filling in small cracks and pores that had appeared over the winter. This was regular maintenance that prevented minor defects from turning into major problems. Modern paint coatings create a film that cracks over time and begins to peel, trapping moisture underneath. Lime never peeled off in sheets. It was slowly washed away by rain without damaging the wall. The white color of the whitewash also played an important role, reflecting the sun's rays and preventing the walls from overheating in summer. This reduced the thermal expansion and contraction of materials, extending the life of the entire structure. The lime coating had the very same vapor permeability, allowing moisture to escape from the wall, unlike acrylic paints. Covering an old facade with modern paint is the surest way to kill it in a couple of years. Inside, lime whitewash also serves sanitary purposes by disinfecting surfaces. In an era without antibiotics and household chemicals, it was a simple and effective means of hygiene. The walls were cleaned not only visually, but also bacteriologically. Today, we use washable wallpaper, which can accumulate dirt and bacteria in its texture. Layer by layer, century after century, lime created a protective crust on the walls, comparable to stalagmite. It was the living skin of the house, which was renewed and healed itself with the help of humans. The simplicity of this solution is ingenious, and that is why it has been forgotten by manufacturers of expensive chemical paints. We have come to the most important difference, which lies not in technology, but in our minds. When laying the first stone of a cathedral, a medieval builder understood that he was embarking on a project that would span generations. He clearly understood that only his students and their children would see the completion of the work. This sense of time made them treat each stage with the utmost care. They built not for immediate gain, but for a mark that would remain on the earth for centuries to come. The medieval master knew that his work would be appreciated not by his contemporaries, but by those who would come after him. Therefore, every stone, every beam, and every carving was made with a sense of responsibility to the future. They did not try to speed up the process because speed was secondary in their value system. The main thing was the reliability and honesty of the work. This attitude shaped a culture of construction where the result was more important than the speed of delivery. This time horizon dictated the choice of materials and the quality of work, which is unattainable for modern developers. Builders chose the best they could find, even if it required enormous effort. They used stone that could survive entire eras and wood that was prepared so that it would not be destroyed by moisture and time. Nothing was done temporarily because the very concept of temporariness was perceived as a mistake. Today's house is an economic product designed to last for the term of a mortgage or until the next resale. The modern approach is based on return on investment rather than longevity. Therefore, buildings are designed so that they can be built quickly, sold quickly, and easily replaced with a new structure after a while. Even architectural solutions are often chosen based on fashion rather than sustainability. This view sharply distinguishes us from the people of the past. The use of cheap materials that imitate expensive ones has become the norm. Everywhere you look, you see plastic panels trying to look like wood, or artificial coatings that only resemble stone from a distance. These materials do not stand the test of time and lose their appearance after just a few seasons. They create the illusion of quality, but do not possess true durability. As a result, such housing quickly ages and becomes a source of waste. Real materials, wood, stone, metal, age gracefully, acquiring value and beauty. Their surface changes, but it is this change that makes them more interesting and alive. Old houses do not lose their appeal. On the contrary, they become bearers of history. This effect cannot be faked, just as time cannot be faked. Therefore, real materials remain relevant even when fashions change. We can bring back this philosophy by choosing quality over quantity and durability over fashion. A home should be a strong refuge where a family feels safe and secure. A return to respect for materials and time can completely change the culture of construction. This approach will allow us to create not temporary structures, but a foundation for future generations. And then we will once again begin to build not a landfill for the future, but a real legacy. Stone, lime, wood, and an understanding of the laws of nature. That is the whole secret of architecture's immortality. The modern race for speed and cheapness has given us comfort, but it has taken away our sense of reliability and connection to eternity. Perhaps we should stop reinventing the wheel and take a closer look at how those whose creations have outlived empires built. What do you think about modern architecture? Is it progress or a dead end of disposable things? What topic from the history of technology would you like to explore in the next video? Write your suggestions in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to discover the secrets of the past with us.